Hello all, this is Dan Perry, and I'm the founder and CEO of Reverse Tide. Now I'm really excited about what I'm about to present to you. I'm a traveler. I really enjoy it, and I've been all over the world in all kinds of different accommodation types. And I've found a really good opportunity that I want to present to you. And I'm looking for partners. I want people who are enthusiastic about the idea and really want to help me bring this to fruition. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over a property type, a real estate opportunity called modern accommodation. And the whole premise of this is that we're looking for partners that can help us realize this vision. So as you're going through it, and as you hopefully agree with a lot of what we're saying, you identify that opportunity, keep in mind that we want to talk to you if you think you can offer us the opportunity to work and bring this to life. Now, we're happy to bring this to life for existing hotels and work with existing businesses to do some of the things and the opportunities that we talk about, or we're happy to actually build this from scratch. So either way, if you can partner with us, if you offer something and bring something to the table, then definitely get into contact with us. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we go into what the modern accommodation is, the context behind it, and the specifics behind it. And if you're interested in anything further, certainly look at our website, reversetide.com, and get into contact with us. All right, let's get started. So why don't we start off with travel, because that's the basis for all accommodation. So we know that tourism has expanded at extremely rapid rates and really changed the world as we see it today. So in the last decade, travel in general has just increased, and it's increased very substantially. So business travel is one segment, and that continues to grow each and every year, and it's a consistent source of travel as well. Globalization has expanded the middle class and therefore given them the access to travel, and that's especially coming from the Asian market. So big cities from around the world are getting influxes of people, primarily from China, but from developing markets all around the world. And by having more people in the pool of available travelers, certainly that's great for the industry, and especially great for accommodation. Flight costs have made it also more reasonable. They've generally trended downward, and especially with the introduction of low-cost carriers. People can fly all around the world for very low costs, and certainly they've taken advantage of that. Remote work arrangements and online jobs allow a lot of very frequent travelers, people who travel almost as their lifestyle, where they're traveling 9 months out of the year, sometimes even 12 months out of the year. Those sort of things really help the travel industry. Online travel applications and other tools like language translation, Google Maps, Uber, and other travel apps have really made travel easy. No longer do you have to worry about going to a foreign land and not knowing what to do, not knowing how to get along in that new place. These apps help people and really allow them to immerse themselves much more easily. Airbnb finally has vastly increased the supply and the affordability of travel accommodation. You have the opportunity to go and live like a local in markets around the world and have all the luxuries that you would normally have from home. It really increases the desirability of travel and opens it to an entirely new segment of people. Now let's go a little bit more into Airbnb because we think that has changed travel forever. Now, the sharing economy, it sounds like a buzzword, but it really actually does have real ramifications on lifestyle and commerce. So first, let's take a look at the growth. It's undeniable when it comes to Airbnb. The number of guests has doubled every year since its introduction, and actually it's now serving more guests than any of the large international hotel chains. And as that graph shows, you can see that's a very serious number. With 51 million people estimated by GSV in 2018, that's a huge segment of the market and certainly does a lot of great things for people who are hosting their properties over Airbnb. Now, why does Airbnb succeed? Why do people want to stay in these sort of dwellings? The two most common answers for why people stay at Airbnb are two things: the affordability and the capability to live like a local. Now, Airbnb is investing in that by going just beyond supplying rooms, but they're also expanding into tourism experiences as well. They identify with what their customers are looking for, and they're adapting that business model to accommodate it. Now, Airbnb, you may have heard about it in the press. It's coming under a lot of regulatory scrutiny, but the thing is, it provides two irrefutable trends. The first is that travel preferences have changed, and that's especially true with millennials. The second is that people like the Airbnb concept. They like having a kitchen. They like having a washing machine. They like having an apartment where you can actually feel like you're living like a local with neighbors and all the different amenities that entails. People enjoy Airbnb. And so there's the opportunity to identify why people like it and then build upon it. So the question is travel done changing? And our answer is a resounding no. Despite Airbnb's surge, there are still segments not being addressed by current travel accommodation options. And we're going to go into a couple of those. So the first is community. So nobody's truly addressed the opportunity to interact with other guests as well as the local town. When you go travel somewhere, it's hard to meet people. You can meet other travelers. You might find them at the local bar. You might join a tour group. You might do those sort of things. But where you stay, whether it's a hotel, whether it's in an Airbnb, there's not a sense of community if one of your goals is to go out and meet people. So that's something that the travel industry needs to accommodate. The second is privacy. So there's still so many different dwellings, both on Airbnb as well as in other accommodation types, that don't give you the sense of privacy that you seek. You want your own room and your own bathroom that are completely undisturbed by others. You have issues with loud neighbors. You have issues with sounds coming from the hallway. Privacy has not necessarily been addressed by the travel industry so well. Third is modern amenities. So hotels have been very slow to adapt, and accommodation in general has been very slow to adapt to technology. People want the opportunity to go online. They want the opportunity to use their travel devices, and maybe even to experiment with other things. They want a modern decoration and not the same corporate feel that they get from most hotels. And they want new and innovative features. The hotel industry really hasn't innovated in a long time. People want something different, and they definitely seek it through the surveys that we see. What else? Flexibility. So there's nothing on the market for certain types of stays. So one good example of that is, let's say you wanted to stay somewhere for greater than 1 month. Airbnb doesn't allow cancellations. You can't move rooms at an Airbnb. So even though Airbnb has generally allowed for a lot of different flexible pricing arrangements, some flexibility in the type of room you get, there's still a long way to go to bring some of the hotel flexibility into this sort of new arrangement enacted by Airbnb. What else? Full facilities. So Airbnb has provided in most of their units kitchens, but they don't necessarily do some of the other things. Laundry can sometimes be at a premium. They almost never offer a gym. Social spaces are very rare in an Airbnb. Dedicated workspaces, again, a pretty rare thing. Offices, and any sort of equipment that you might need for professional travel. None of these things are necessarily offered in the Airbnb market. And even in hotels nowadays, not all these things are necessarily a part of that experience. So how do you get full facilities when you're on the road traveling? We want to address that. So besides price, location, and quality, these are some of the main priorities people generally have in travel. And that's backed up by anecdotal evidence, surveys, and all kinds of other trends that we see in the marketplace. Now, Airbnb doesn't necessarily offer all these things, despite having a lot of the really desirable features that people have sought. Neither do hotels, neither do corporate housing, hostels, or any other accommodation option. And that's why we need a modern accommodation option. We need something that can cater to all different market segments, but really change in a lot of the ways that we've outlined on this slide. So how can we do that? That's the question we want to answer. So let's first just talk about all the different accommodations on the market right now. Some of these have strengths and weaknesses, but we want to focus on the negatives because we think we can improve upon all of the different things. So let's go through some of them. So the first is through Airbnb. The experience can generally be very inconsistent. It's hard to locate the property when you're new in a city. You don't know where to go. You don't know how to find the guest sometimes. Or sometimes you don't even know how to get hold of the host. You might go to a new country and not have the communication options. You might not have a SIM card in that country. So sometimes it can be very difficult to do. Customer service can be spotty. Now, certainly there's some great experiences and some great hosts, but on the flip side, there's also some bad ones as well. And cleanliness is regularly an issue because these are not professional accommodation people. These are people who are simply renting out their home. What else? Bookings tend to be a lot less solid on Airbnb. So some have experienced discrimination, others have had bookings canceled at the last minute, and unfortunately through Airbnb there's not a whole lot of recourse for events like these. With a hotel you can switch rooms, and let's say they ran out of rooms, they would generally help you book at a different hotel. But there's nothing with Airbnb. If you run into a bad experience, let's say the room isn't what you expected, let's say you didn't get hold of the host, let's say you had some issue, there's no recourse in order to accommodate you. So that's something that people commonly complain about Airbnb with, and their customer service record, pretty spotty as well. In addition, there's no community. There's no social interaction in a residential dwelling. Now, certainly some of the units are shared by the owner, but the fact is, if you want to go meet other travelers, it's a lot more difficult to do in an Airbnb compared to some of the other accommodation options. In addition, Airbnb and its listings mostly cater to the short-term traveler. So there's low supply and poor resourcing for the medium to long-term renters and tourists. No platform is necessarily accommodating people that want to stay longer than a month. What else? A large percentage of Airbnb units are actually getting regulated away today. So many cities and jurisdictions have regulated who can rent apartments out. They limit the number of permits or the supply in that market. Sometimes they don't allow a unit to stay open for a certain number of days. They might cap it at 60 days per year, for example. And others are just trying to get rid of it completely. The platform's great, but hosts generally are breaking local laws by listing their property. And so that's a problem, and it's getting regulated to the point where it's actually starting to restrict supply and restrict entry into the market. Okay, let's go on to hotels. So hotels, for the most part, are too expensive for the non-luxury or business traveler. Airbnb, by comparison, is often 50% less on a per-night basis, as well as the fact that Airbnb generally discounts for a weekly or a monthly rental. So much, much cheaper. And as we said before, that's one of the reasons people choose Airbnb over a hotel. Corporate hotels are just too standard. The decoration is outdated. You don't really feel like you're living like a local. And we know that that's a big priority of travelers these days. They go to a city because they want to experience that city. And hotels, they're just too standard these days. There's no community. So you might have a lobby, you might have a hotel bar, but there's no sense of how do you go about and meet other travelers. If you're traveling alone, if you're traveling on business, even if you're traveling with a group of people, oftentimes you want to meet other people so that you can experience that with others. There's no sense of community, and hotels don't prioritize actually making that part of the experience. The facilities are a big problem in hotels. In addition to not utilizing their facilities well, they don't make use of modern amenities. So many hotels still force you to pay for Wi-Fi. They don't have any business features, or if they do, they're not all that useful. And there's really no modern technology in the room or even on site. So they might have a Wi-Fi connection, they might have some monitors and some printers in their business office, but the most modern of technology is going unutilized by hotels. That's a problem, and that's something that a lot of people complain about. Boutique hotels, meanwhile, also have a hard time differentiating themselves, and thus marketing. So while their decoration might be more attractive, it's still not giving the modern customer what they want. They want somewhere where it's reasonably priced, they want technology in their room, they want the opportunity for community, and boutique hotels, they do some things quite well, but it's coming at the expense of various other things. So even they're not quite where travelers want them to be. Finally, hotels are just not connected to the younger generation. They don't care about a lot of the things that are common. They don't care about large lobbies. It doesn't go utilized. They don't necessarily care about on-site restaurants and bars because they'll just pull up one of their apps and they'll find somewhere better down the street. There's no connection to any modern trends at many of the hotels in this world. So that's a big problem. And that's why millennials are so attracted to Airbnb, because they're better serving a lot of their needs. Hotels just not so much doing that today. Okay, so what about some other ones? Hostels. So people generally don't want to share rooms with others. The reason that they do it at a hostel is done out of necessity because the rates are so much cheaper. Where you can get a bed for, let's say, $7, $10 a night. It's so much cheaper. But nobody wants to be sharing a room with 15 other people. It's simply not a good night of sleep. There's security issues. There's cleanliness issues. There's issues with the people that you're surrounded by. It's simply not a good experience. What else? Hostels don't cater toward the private room very successfully. Some of them do offer a private room, but gosh, it's definitely not quite up to the standard of an Airbnb or a hotel in terms of what they offer, the amenities, the room features, and so on. Very often there's some cleanliness issues, there's security issues, and generally people see that in a hostel. Now, some are very clean, some are very safe, but generally there's a perception issue there. Okay, corporate housing. So no industry booking capability for a corporate housing type of unit, so something like an Expedia or like an Airbnb. In addition, hotels are often preferable for the corporate traveler because they offer reward points or loyalty schemes. That's a very attractive thing if you're traveling often, so that you can get free rooms when you want to use it for leisure. In addition, corporate housing is often marked up substantially. In our case, we've seen it 100% and sometimes even more. And you're not necessarily getting anything extra, it's just that they accommodate the business market. So you can see all of these different options have some very significant negatives to them, and we want to try and fix that. So how would we do that? Well, let's take a look. So we want to introduce the modern accommodation, and what it does is it takes the strengths from each of the accommodation types that we mentioned: hotels, Airbnb, hostels, and corporate housing. So the modern accommodation would have all the features you see on this slide: nice private rooms, a large property with all the amenities that people like gym, pool, that sort of a thing. It would have on-site staff to handle any needs that the guests might have. And it would have a scalable cost for a portfolio of rooms. That's what hotels offer. From a standpoint of Airbnb, we would offer something cheaper, the opportunity to live like a local, home amenities like kitchen, laundry, and so forth. From a hostel standpoint, community areas or common areas, different room sizes for different preferences, and social events. And then finally, from a corporate housing standpoint, we would provide business-ready facilities, long-term stay potential, and the proximity to some of the major markets that often host a lot of corporate travelers. So the features of it would be, we would purchase a hotel property. It would be zoned and have the land use for hotel usage. We would equip it like a nice Airbnb unit so people can feel like they're living like a local, and they'd have the privacy around it as well. We would replace all of the really useless things like the giant lobbies, restaurants that go unutilized, conference rooms that, again, very underutilized, and we would replace it with things that are most important to the guest, like communal spaces, so providing large kitchens, a gym, a good gym actually, co-work space, pool, business equipment, and so many other things. We'd make it modern with the most advanced technology, decoration, and equipment, and we would aim for Airbnb prices. And we would do that from an increasing occupancy and scaling cost sort of standpoint. So there's a business reason around why we would do that. So really, really cool modern accommodation. It appeals to the millennials, but it also appeals to the mass market segment as well. All the different important groups, like business travelers are covered, tourist travelers are covered. It's a really interesting thing. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Is this possible? How can you stuff all of these different things into a single property? Well, we have ideas about exactly how we would do that. So let's give a couple examples, and in the next video we'll go a little bit further into the investment side of things. But these are some opportunities to offer a hotel and management company is our part of the deal. So a couple examples of how we would market and operate a business. So the first might be a bed and breakfast type of property. So in this case, let's say that we locate in Charleston in the United States, which has probably the highest room rate to property price ratio in the country. So that's a really important thing from an investment standpoint. Now, people go there for Southern charm, they go there for its history, and all the outdoor activities that they have in their proximity. So we would purchase a property centered around that Southern bed and breakfast type of style. So it would be a large estate with traditional Southern decoration. It might have 15 to 20 rooms, and that would be to achieve operational scale and profitability. We would facilitate tours throughout the Charleston area, maybe golf events, boat cruises, Southern cooking classes, those sort of things. We would market towards the weekend getaway couples or friend groups, all those sort of events. And then we would provide the Airbnb rates for that city, which tend to be about $250 a night. Now that $250 sounds like a lot, but that's actually below your average price for a hotel room in that city. So in general, that would be a very desirable place to stay. It has the charm of a bed and breakfast, but it has the modern amenities, the community, and all the other things that people seek from other property types. So there you go. That's one example. Another example might be the co-live and workspace. So nowadays, there's a large and increasing group of younger people that work online, they travel for business, or they're just generally location independent. They travel the world seeking experiences, but they lack community in each city. So what would we do? We would provide a facility and location catering towards a young professional crowd. We would equip the place with business features, so things like great Wi-Fi, technology, good workspaces, and professional connectivity. We might facilitate events catering to that young professional crowd. Things like yoga, pub crawls, pizza night, trivia night, those sort of things. And we would provide medium rates, but more units in this case, and then marketing towards longer or more frequent stays. So you can see there's still profitability in a property like this, but we're catering towards the more millennial type of traveler, business travelers, location-independent professionals, and we provide everything that they're looking for in a unit. So another example. Finally, let's do one more. So how about the lodge? So people go to places like beaches, ski resorts, and destinations centered around an activity. Now, while real estate and accommodation is pricey next to attractions like those, we would create a reasonably priced alternative, let's say about 10 minutes away. So a facility just barely outside of town, 10-minute drive from, let's say, the beach, or 30 minutes from a ski resort, but we would actually provide the transportation and organize activities centered around it. We'd provide activities and social interaction that goes above and beyond the city's main attractions, and we'd provide medium rates that are more affordable than the center of town type destinations, but we would target the longer stay visitors, and that way it would allow us to maintain good occupancy rates and therefore profitability. Okay, so those were 3 good examples, and obviously not every single property type necessarily fits into one of those 3 examples, but it just brings the concept to life and illustrates the sort of thing that you would see if we were to build a modern accommodation. Okay, so to really conclude with what we're trying to say, we told you at the beginning that we're looking to get involved in this. And even though we're branding this as Reverse Tide, we're asking you to contact me at Reverse Tide. That's just because I'm founder and CEO of the company. Reverse Tide's not going to be the one who does this. We would create a separate entity, and we would work as a separate business line. So if you're interested in some capacity, please get into contact with us because we want to talk to you about bringing this to life. And there's really 3 different ways that you can help. Number 1 might be that you have real estate experience and hopefully hotel-specific experience, and you can help us broker a deal in some regard. Or maybe you're an existing accommodation owner or manager. You like the ideas and you want to have some help implementing those ideas on your property. You might want to implement the entire vision, or you might want to pick and choose just some of the things that we talked about that maybe will help you achieve better profitability, give your guests a better experience, help you market it better, something like that. Or alternatively, if you heard something in this and you really liked it and you said, you know what, I think I can help you in a different way, get into contact. We're more than happy to investigate all kinds of different partnership opportunities. Okay, so you can see my contact information. That's contact@reversetide.com, and that will get hold of me directly because this is a partnership with me. I'm not looking for anything out of Reverse Tide. It's specifically with me. Now, what will happen if you get into contact with me is I have so much more information that I haven't presented here. I have a detailed financial model about how you would achieve profitability in this. I've identified specific properties that would be perfect for this business model, ones that are already for sale today. I've built a lot more detail into exactly what this would look like, all the specific business model details in things like marketing, facilities utilization, all the different things I talked about. I have really fine level of detail on a lot of those things. So if you get into contact with me, I'm happy to share that. But I, of course, want this to be working towards a partnership, and hopefully you can bring some good insights or good partnership potential to the table as well. So definitely get into contact with me, and I'm more than happy to set up some time, share what I've found, share some of the opportunities in a bit more detail, and hopefully proceed to something spectacular. Okay, thanks so much. Really appreciate it and hope to hear from you soon.